What is up, Tube users, and welcome back to another fantastically fun games for under $15. Today, we are talking about an OG classic game in Star Wars Battlefront 2. This game just brings back so much nostalgia playing this game on the original Xbox back in the day. And I mean, by today's standards, it probably doesn't hold up as well as most other first person shooters out there, but it still is decently fun to play. Unfortunately, they don't have any more multiplayer servers. I think they went offline quite a while ago, but even the single player campaign aspect and just playing around with bots is pretty enjoyable. And even though this game is, I think, 18 years old now, it still holds up decently well, and it's kind of why I recommend it. It definitely gives the nostalgic aspect. So if you played this game back in the day, back in 2005 when it came out, I mean, just going back and playing it, it works and runs really well on PC. So it's just so enjoyable and so nostalgic to play, especially if you played it before. And even if you haven't played it, I think it's one of the best Star Wars games out there. I mean, I think this is really the only one I played a lot of in terms of Star Wars games, and I haven't really played any of the new Star Wars games, but this one just hits home so well, and it is so enjoyable to play. And I think the big reason for that is just because this game was so far ahead of its time. I mean, you had your big team battles of 64v64, which was absolutely crazy online, and it's still pretty hectic just playing with bots, that many of them. And it's so enjoyable to see that. And then you have like all these different vehicle combats. It is kind of janky doing like some of the aerial battles and stuff on PC, just because the sensitivity and stuff is kind of wonky. But once you get the hang of it, it's not that bad. So it's definitely just a game that feels like it comes from like 2020s, and it feels like one of those games, obviously not graphics wise, but definitely gameplay wise. But this game came out in 2005, so it's just crazy to see what they were able to accomplish on the original Xbox and PlayStation 2 systems. And I can't imagine that this game originally came out on PC as well during that time. I think it was a console exclusive game to PlayStation and to Xbox, but this console port, as it were, is actually really well done. It still just feels and plays like it did in 2005, but even on a really high-end computer, I mean, it just runs super smooth. I didn't face any sort of issues whatsoever. There's a few things here and there on the technical side, but nothing that isn't like worth noting down as being super over egregious and bad for the game. And I think because this game was so far ahead of its time is why it still holds up so well. I mean, the vehicle combat is so good, especially like the land vehicles. Obviously, we talked about the aerial vehicles being a little bit janky, but I believe that this game has controller support, which just makes it that much easier to get into the vehicles and stuff like that. And just all the different maps. I mean, they feel large, they feel big, they feel really good to play on. Obviously, they're kind of basic to some aspect. I mean, obviously, graphics wise too, there's not a whole lot going on, but it just makes it that much more enjoyable. I feel you can go into these different games, you can go into these different maps, and it feels like you're in the Star Wars movies, which is exactly what you want from a Star Wars game. And for the low price point of only $10 right now, not on sale, I think this game is a must-have, especially if you're a Star Wars fan, but even just first-person shooters in general. I mean, obviously this game is old, and it doesn't have like the same mechanics of your Call of Duties or Battlefields, but it does play like a Battlefield game in a lot of senses. You have the big team battles, you have your big ships and tanks and whatnots, you have your aerial vehicles for aerial combat. You have all the basics of a Battlefield game just put into a Star Wars game, which just is super fun to play, and it's makes it all the more enjoyable that something like this can still be fun even 18, even 20 years in the future, which is just a marvel to the technical aspects of this game. In the hero system in this game, or I don't know what you would want to call it exactly, but being able to play as like some of the best heroes in the game is super fun. I can't remember how it worked exactly back in the day when you played in multiplayer, but obviously the bots don't control unless you allow them to control the heroes and such. So, I mean, you just basically have free reign. I think it was maybe like a kill streak or something that allowed you to become Darth Vader or Luke Skywalker or whoever. But when you're just playing solo, you can, once the pop-up comes up, you're just able to jump right in and play them. And basically every single one of them is totally unique and feels so good to play. I mean, it just feels like you're this absolute menace on the battlefield, which is super fun and enjoyable in a Star Wars game. And I think what this game does really well is it nails the aspects of a first-person shooter, which is the majority of the game, but it also nails all those Star Wars aspects that you want to see in a game labeled as Star Wars, you know? You have your like Jedis and stuff, and all of the lightsaber combat feels really good and fluid. All the Jedis and Sith Lords and whoever you're playing as feel really strong and powerful compared to the rest of the regular heroes or regular characters that you play as. Everything just feels super smooth too. I mean, just with how compact everything is, with like 128 players playing, it still feels really good to play. Especially doing like these battles of Jedis versus Sith are like my favorite to play. Just how fun it is to play with all of these different Sith and Jedis on the field. Unfortunately, this is the only map you can do this game mode on, but it's honestly, I think the map is called like Mos Elise or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it's called. But it is so fun to play, and it's honestly one of my favorite maps to just play in general in the game. Just seeing all of these different heroes, when normally in a normal game you'd see like one, maybe two out on the battlefield at a time. Just seeing a whole bunch of them just interacting and battling it out on this map is so much fun to play, even by today's standards. In the normal game modes, it does feel kind of basic, but it still works and still plays really well. You have like your normal, like just regular weaponry. Most of it's like semi-automatic guns, but you have like your rocket launchers, you have your snipers, you have your shotguns. So there's definitely a variety, and there's definitely tactics and stuff that you can use with each different characters that you can play. There's different stuff you can do, and it just makes it that much more fresh and exciting to play. It definitely feels and plays like a Battlefield game, and this was just like before Battlefield's time even, so it's crazy that they were able to do this, and especially on the PlayStation 2 and Xbox system. It's just a marvel at the technology put into this game. And you also have like your normal tropes of a FPS, like you have body shots do less damage, you have your headshot multipliers that do more damage. So everything in a first person shooter is there. It's just crammed into a game that was made in 2005, which still holds up so well. And that's just it. I just am blown away by going back to this game today and just seeing how well it still holds up. It's just crazy to even think about. And really the only like downsides I would say to this game is because it is a PC port and because it's such an old game, there's not a whole lot of options you can do. Like, I'm able to stretch the screen and able to bring it into a resolution that works for videos, but I was playing in a very small screen on my ultra wide monitors, so there's not a whole lot you could do there. And also, like, a lot of the PC settings are just it's all old school sprites, so there's not a whole lot you can do there. The menu system is kind of clunky to work around. It's definitely not the best by any means, so that can also be a challenge. And plus, playing with bots, it can be frustrating because you're not really in control of your entire team. Obviously, you do have the chance to turn tides by you're basically the only one being able to play a Jedi or Sith, which gives you an advantage and can turn the tides, which is super satisfying, obviously, when you do that. But it can be frustrating too, to just like lose a game and you're like, what happened? I'm doing so well, and it's kind of just out of your control. And obviously you could tell that this game is definitely a PC port and was made especially for controllers and Xbox and PlayStation systems, just because of how things play, especially vehicles and stuff. It doesn't feel that good on PC, but it still works, and you can still make it work if you're using mouse and keyboard. So it's definitely not something that it does take away from the game a bit, but it definitely doesn't make it unplayable. I still think this game is absolutely fun to play, and I highly recommend anyone just go try it, especially for $10. I mean, with an entire campaign to go through, with the Galactic Conquest kind of secondary campaign almost as it was to go through, you can go through each sort of platoons of enemies. You could be droids, you could be just Jedis, you could be a whole bunch of different things, and just go through conquesting all of the Star Wars as it was. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did. Comment any other games for under $15 you want me to review, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
That rhythm.